Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, we are going back. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite TV episodes of all time. The series was called A Different World.
I know my parents loved me, stand behind me, come what may. I know now that I'm ready, yeah, for I finally heard them say, it's a different world, ooh, than where you come from. The city is now, yeah.
It was a sitcom that aired on NBC from September 24th, 1987 until July 9th, 1993. 6 seasons on the air. This show was a spinoff from The Cosby Show. The show was supposed to be featured around Denise Huxtable. Denise was the daughter of Cliff and Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. And the actress, Lisa Bonet, was to have gone off to this fictional, historically black college and university, or HBCU, called Hillman College. And I think Hillman was located in Virginia. And this show was everything. It really was must-see TV, and I'm going to get into, the significance of the show and so forth and so on, and what I liked about the show. But A Different World. A Different World ran for 6 seasons. I was automatically hooked on A Different World from the beginning. The reason being is that I was a huge Cosby Show fan, much like most people my age. Or just that came up in that era of the 80s. And, I was, most guys, they liked looking at Denise Huxtable. I always thought Lisa Bonet was cute. But when we got the news that she would be having her own spinoff, and the cool part about it was the Cosby Show came on NBC at 8:00 on Thursday nights, right? And so A Different World was right behind it. So you got an hour worth of TV. And I mean, like, in the era before TiVo and DVRs and streaming, that was appointment TV. Like, literally, like, you didn't want to move. You didn't want to miss anything because once an episode aired, like, you didn't see it again until maybe the summertime. But A Different World was really, really cool because for me, it was a depiction of something that I was very familiar with, and that was an HBCU, again, a historically black college and university. Although Hillman was fictional, if you follow The Cosby Show, you know that Cliff and Claire Huxtable met at Hillman College. So it was kind of dope when you think about it, because here it is, their daughter, she was the second oldest daughter. She was going off to college. Now, her older sister, Sandra, went to Princeton, but that's another story for another day. But Denise Huxtable was going to Hillman. And the cool part about it was she was following in her parents' footsteps. And so it was really, really dope to see a spinoff. And I mean, I know I follow TV and was a TV buff at the time. But I knew that there were spinoffs before, long before this spinoff happened. But this was different because, the stuff that Denise and her brother Theo, who's a couple of years younger, the stuff that they dealt with on the Cosby Show was right in my wheelhouse, because at the time So we're talking 87, 87. I was in high school. Like I was a freshman in high school. So it was relatable content. And so by the time A Different World hit season 2 and I saw everything that happened on that season, I was like, that's it. I'm done. Like it was a wrap. I knew that personally I wanted to go to an HBCU. Um, but the show was incredible. Like I said, it ran for 6 seasons. Um, so we can get into some of the particulars. Um, it was, I will say this before I get into the favorites and stuff like that. The first season, featured Denise, her roommate Jaleesa, who was played by Dawn Lewis, Marissa Tomei. Her name was Maggie. Maggie was played by Marissa Tomei. Marissa Tomei was interesting because she was a white girl at a predominantly black college. And honestly, you really didn't see a lot. Just judging from my own personal experience, we didn't really have, a lot of white girls at our school. I can't think of none in their undergrad, but that's another story for another day. Anyway, but the first season, for as happy as we were to have a first season, and of course it featured 2 guys, Dwayne Wayne and his partner Ron Johnson, and of course the Southern Belle, Whitley Gilbert. For as much as as much as we were hyped about the show, as much as we liked the show, if I'm gonna keep it a bean with y'all, looking back on it now, that first season wasn't that good. I mean, relatively speaking, compared to the other seasons, I'll say that much. If I can compare the seasons, season 1 was, I think I can pretty safe to go on record and say, in my opinion, season 1 was the worst season. And it wasn't that it was bad. It just wasn't as good as the other seasons. But something different happened before season 2. Before season 2 started, they fired the director of who directed season 1. I can't remember the lady's name. And they hired the legendary Debbie Allen to be the director on season 2. And when I tell you, if you ever watch A Different World, the contrast between season 1 and season 2 are like night and day. Literally. But yeah, it was must see TV. I, just like a bunch of my friends, we all gathered around the TV to watch A Different World. So let's get into some of the particulars. Favorite character. Do I have I loved most of the characters on A Different World. I'll probably say my favorite character was Dwayne Wayne. Dwayne Wayne, obviously, if you watched A Different World, he had his little funky flip up glasses. But the thing that I liked about Dwayne Wayne was that, one, he dressed. And like, I remember like one of the first episodes that I remember seeing, he had on the white cement 3s. For my sneakerheads out there, those are Air Jordans. He had the cement 3s on and he had the white, they were white. And I was like, yo, because I mean, like, you didn't see, like, for as dope as Theo was on the Cosby Show, Theo ain't dressed fly. Like, he had no gear, or as the young folks say, drip. Get out of here with that drip stuff. But no, Theo wasn't like a fly dresser. Theo, he dressed decent, but he never had on no fly jeans and no fly clothes and no fly sneakers. But yeah, one of the first episodes I remember seeing Dwayne Wayne, he had on a pair of the white cement 3s. And I'm like, yo, that dude is fly. And the thing about it was that it made me think like, okay, when I get to that stage, when I get to college, I gotta be fly too, because Dwayne Wayne was fly. Like you never seen him in no busted clothes. And that was by design. Um, but Dwayne Wayne was one of my favorite. He's probably my favorite character. Smart guy. He's from Brooklyn, New York. He was the guy that his freshman year was, trying to chase everybody and was constantly getting dissed. And I came to find out later on in life, once I got to college, that can happen. In fact, it will happen, to some degree to most guys, their freshman year. You're not as cool and you're not as fly, you're not as everything, but it kind of, just like Dwayne, it kind of evens out at some point, right? Yeah, he's probably my favorite character. And ironically enough, his freshman year, which was season 1, Dwayne had a huge crush on Denise Huxtable. Now Denise was, something in and of itself. She was a person in season 1 who was trying to find herself. She was making the adjustment of being away from home. And she was on this historically Black college campus where her parents went to school, where there were people on the campus that knew her parents. And given the fact that her dad at the time that he was in college was a track athlete, everybody knew Huxtable. So, she was walking in some pretty big shoes. And I'm sure that wasn't easy for Denise. But like I said, Dwayne, he pretty much worshiped the ground that Denise walked on, which really wasn't, really looking back on it, was kind of corny, but realistically, there are some people that act like that, particularly when they're in school. So I mentioned the change from Debbie Allen, the first director, to Debbie Allen in season 2. That wasn't the only change that happened in season 2. In season 2, Denise Huxtable, the person who the show is built around, is no longer in college. If my memory serves me correct, Lisa Bonet, the actress who played Denise Huxtable, she did a movie called, what was it, Angel Heart, I think? And she had like this wild, crazy sex scene with Mickey Rourke, and there was like blood and stuff like that. And Bill Cosby, with his squeaky clean image, go figure, at the time, Mr. Puddin' Pop wasn't having that. So there was some discussion about that. And then I think not long after she did that movie, I think she got pregnant. And again, I'm not looking this up. Don't fact check me. I think once she got pregnant, they didn't want to have a situation where you have this pregnant girl on a college campus, so forth and so on, which is crazy because that happens. I mean, kids have sex and kids get pregnant at college. But anyway, so those were the two major changes. So you have a situation where you have this show and the person who the show is supposed to be around is no longer on the show. Like she wasn't, Lisa Bonet, aka Denise Huxtable, she wasn't on the Cosby Show, she wasn't on A Different World or anything. So I don't necessarily know if that could have happened in today's times, but it happened. And so everybody else had to kind of pick up the slack. And so that's where Debbie Allen comes in at, and her writing and directing changed the whole scope of the show. And instead of it being featured on Denise Huxtable, it became featured on Dwayne Wayne, Whitley Gilbert, Jaleesa Vincent, and so forth and so on, as well as a crop of freshmen that came in. You had Freddie, you had Kim. So season 2 kind of changed everything. And it's funny because quite often, at least a couple of times a week, I'll sit and watch an episode, especially if it's on, because I think it comes on now, like on TV One. If A Different World's on, I'll sit and watch an episode, and I watch the episodes as if I've never seen them before. And it's funny is that my wife and I watch them, and our kids watch them. So they they've seen the whole series, right? The show was dope. I mean, like it was really, really dope. So many memorable, moments, and I'll touch on my favorite episode in just a second. Least favorite character. Let me think. I didn't like Maggie, but in fairness to Maggie, that was, like I said, she was played by Marissa Tomei, and it wasn't because she was a white girl. I just didn't like Maggie. I mean, like, she didn't fit. I can't really say. Oh, now after Maggie, my least favorite character was Terrence Taylor, Colonel Taylor's son. I didn't like Terrence at all. Terrence really had no bearing. Like, I didn't see the purpose of him being on the show. I know he was Colonel Taylor's son, but he was just like corny. Like, and I don't know if they brought him in to be like the new Dwayne Wayne or whatever like that, but it was just like, nah, bro, you whack. Like, that's crazy. So I wasn't a fan of Terrence. I mean, like I can't really think of any time where he had a scene that stole the show. Like, he never stole. He was incapable of stealing the show. So yeah, I probably say least favorite characters, probably a tie between, and I think Terrence was on season 4, and he might have been in season 6, I think. Let's see what else. There were, so like I said, some great moments. I'll get into my favorite episodes. Let me see. Least favorite episode. My least favorite episode probably was season 6. I can't remember the name of the episode, but it was an episode where the kids came across Billy D. Williams. Shout out to Colt 45. They came across Billy D, and he was like this old baseball player, and he was having a hard time like readjusting to his life or whatever like that. And that was forgettable. And I like Billy D, but I mean, it was bad. It just didn't stack up with the rest of the episodes. So that was probably my least favorite episode. Favorite episode. My favorite episode is probably everybody's favorite episode. It's actually it was a 2-part episode. It was the end of season 4, I think. Or it might have been the end of season 5. Yeah, I think it was the end of season 5 because season 6 was the final season. And that was the 2 episodes that led to the season finale. And in the season finale where Dwayne steals Whitney at the altar from Byron. But I think, like, people get hung up in that moment, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But people get hung up on part 2, but part 1 was really, really dope because in part 1, Dwayne talks about, or he has this scene where he goes to see Whitney and they have this conversation. And I mean, of course, hindsight's always 2020, but we didn't know what was going to happen, but they never really had any closure to their relationship. They had broken off the relationship. She started seeing Byron. They ended up sleeping together one night, and that was months later. And Byron, and at the time that they slept together, I think Whitley was engaged with Byron, and Dwayne didn't know where he stood, but they had a very serious conversation. And I think the conversation was very important for the two of them.
I mean, when I first came to Hellman, I was Joe Knucklehead, goofy freshman with flip-up glasses.
Couldn't buy a day.
Yeah. But I ended up with you, free of charge. The woman I couldn't stand became my best friend, my girl, my lover. Even though you challenged me every step of the way, babe.
Well, you know me. All or nothing.
Well, you better not change.
Dwayne, I thought that I would always be dependent on a man. I thought that's just the way it's going to be. But you taught me how to depend on myself.
You taught me how to love, Whitley.
You taught me how to love.
If we were all that to each other, why didn't our relationship work? Yeah, I don't know either. I always knew you'd make a beautiful bride with me.
And then you get to part 2 where Dwayne pulls off the most miraculous and improbable theft of TV ever. And the scene was so set. I mean, like, when we saw it play out in real life, it was just incredible. I think it goes without saying, it's a scene that anybody who watched that show will never, ever forget.
Go on, Reverend. Go on.
I can't until she responds.
Well, she means yes.
Well, she's got to say yes.
I will.
Will you?
Blessed are those who ask the questions, Bubba.
Whitley, I love you, and if you'll have me, I want you to be my wife.
What the hell are you doing?
Hey, I'm sorry, Byron, I love her.
Just die.
Will you have me, Dwayne, as your lawfully wedded husband from this day forth to having a home and richer for poorer? Baby, please, please.
I do. You heard it. She said, and I do.
But to whom?
I'm sorry, Byron. No.
I mean, he said, baby, please. But yeah, it was dope. It was dope. Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Those 2 episodes probably my favorite episodes of A Different World. Overall, I think this show, it did a lot. It probably did a lot more than we would ever think, or maybe they ever thought that it would. I mentioned that, it introduced me. It didn't introduce me because I'd already had family members. I had an uncle that graduated from South Carolina State, as a matter of fact. And by the time A Different World aired, my older cousin Mike was at South Carolina State too. So, but what A Different World showed me that, I could go to an HBCU and my HBCU could be Hillman. And Hillman, honestly, kind of, it really mirrored, South Carolina State. We had a pit too, and that's where people hung out and kicked it at. And we had dorms, they didn't look like that, but they were very similar. And the things that they dealt with on a day-to-day basis, on an episode basis, was a lot of stuff that we dealt with in college ourselves. One episode that resonates with me, real strong was, the episode where Ron and Dwayne are pledging, and they're pledging a fraternity. And, Dwayne was like, look, man, I'm not going to be doing a bunch of dumb stuff just to be somebody's brother. And, Ron was like, he was with it. He was with the pledging, and because he saw the long-term benefits of being in the fraternity. And if you ever set foot on, well, you don't necessarily have to set foot, but if you ever set foot on an HBCU campus, you will know that fraternities and sororities and their importance to that particular campus, to Black college life in general. And for those of you wondering, I didn't pledge a fraternity. I chose not to. And people always ask why. I'm like, just didn't want to. Like there was never a burning desire to do it. But now some of my closest friends pledged, and my cousin Eric, they pledged fraternities, and some of my closest friends pledged sororities. My wife is in a sorority. But it just wasn't for me. I don't knock it. It just wasn't for me. But that particular episode is very telling because of, sometimes you can have friends as close as Ron and Dwayne, and their friendships can be strengthened or torn apart by them, pledging a fraternity or sorority for that matter. But like I said, I think A Different World, the common theme that you will hear about A Different World from many people in all walks of life is that it introduced them to HBCUs. And there are a lot of people that will say, if I didn't see A Different World, I wouldn't have gone to an HBCU. And that's fact. I can't necessarily say that applies to me, but the way that it was portrayed on that screen, it even further and pushed my desire to go. Because and I mentioned this on the podcast before, and it's worth repeating. By the time that I was a junior in high school, I knew for a fact that I wasn't even considering a PWI. It wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. So it was just about, okay, well, which HBCU am I going to? Because I had no desire to go, being from the state of South Carolina, I had no desire to go to Clemson, had no desire to go to University of South Carolina, had no desire to go to, Winthrop or, God forbid, the Citadel. I don't mean it like that, but I mean, I'm not a military type person. So the Citadel definitely wasn't for me. So, and that included other schools too, as well. So it was, and it's no knock. It just wasn't for me. But A Different World put me in the mindset of, this is where you're going. And this is the experience that you're going to have, and you're going to love it. And it's going to be any and everything that you want it to be. It was Wakanda, and I didn't even know it. But yeah, those experiences are invaluable. And I think a show like that is invaluable. And it's unfortunate that we don't have shows like that on TV anymore. But I tell you what, A Different World was a trailblazer. The actors and actresses on that show, the directors, everyone involved, they played a major role in how HBCUs were perceived. They played a major role in how we viewed ourselves and how HBCU viewed us. And I think that's a great thing. I think, again, if you ask a multitude of people what was their first introduction to HBCUs, they will say A Different World. And if a TV show can do that, then that says a lot about a TV show. I mean, I'll be honest, I could go on and on about every episode and the things that I love, but the show was magical. The show was everything that I loved about it. And when it went off the air, it was unfortunate because I think that they had plenty of time where they could have kept going, but the network chose to go in a different direction. Now that that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother day. But no matter what, you can't change the impact. And I think for that, myself as an HBCU alum, we're forever grateful. And that'll never change. But hey, that's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can find the podcast on all streaming platforms. You can watch it on YouTube. So make sure that you subscribe. And from time to time, there'll be bonus episodes that will drop on Sundays at midnight. Again, I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5G.